Hello everyone, I'm Joe Cordeiro, Police Chief for City of New Bedford. And as you probably already know, March is Women's History Month. And I couldn't have a better person to be here with me today and give us some insight to women in policing. My good friend, please welcome my good friend, retired Sergeant Rita Ribeiro. Welcome, Rita.
Thank you, Chief.
Rita, maybe you could help our viewers really understand what it was like and how you became a police officer in the first place and what that was like back then.
Well, quite different than what it is today, Chief. Growing up, I never even thought of becoming a police officer. Nobody in my family had ever been a police officer. I had no intentions, wasn't even on my radar. And probably in the 70s, early 70s, during the riots, I lived in the West End at that time, and I saw a lot. And I remember a woman, a friend of mine actually today, who's like my sister, who happened to be the first woman of color for the police department in New Bedford. Her name is Pauline M. Garcelon. Pauline was a big influence in my life. We grew up, believe it or not, she's a little older than me, it's a big joke, but our backyards touched each other, and she was always older, and I always admired her and saw her in the neighborhood. She went away, got married. As a result of the death of her husband, she moved back, and she then pursued a career in policing. And she was a woman, first woman of color in the women's division of the police department. And I always watched her, and at the time I didn't want that position because I kind of thought it was a little different that they wore the skirts and the hats, and to me it wasn't being a police officer.
Like a flight attendant almost,
yeah,
right?
Kind of. Yeah, it was a little bit different, but I remember actually a very influential woman in my life as well was Marguerite Doughton. I was in the Upward Bound program, and she recruited me one day and said, "You know what? You would make a good police officer. Why don't you take the exam?" And I went, "A police officer?" Now my husband always looked at police and kind of wanted to be a police officer and never said anything. And then when I came home and said, "You know, I'm going to take the exam. I'm going to take the exam for the police department," he went, "You're going to be a cop?" I said, "Yeah, I'm going to try it." And he goes, "Good for you." And consequently, the rest is history. I did take the exam and became a police officer. Pauline, when they changed the law, I think it was back in I think it was around 76, when they changed it from police women to police officers. Pauline then was recruited from the women's division into the detective division as the first woman in the detective division at the time. And she was there for years. So she was a big influence in my life as a police officer. I came on the department. She was always somebody I looked up to and really highly respected. And the rest is history.
Rita, that is really a really wonderful story. And Pauline Garcelon, can't say enough about her. She was just a wonderful human being. When she left, I says, "Pauline, you're one of the last of the Mohegans. They just don't make them like you anymore," which is true. Rita, what were some of the challenges back in the 70s? I mean, I can imagine how daunting it was coming into a man's world where women were just being recognized, actually just made equal to be from a police woman to a police officer, to having that same equality. But there wasn't equality, right? What were your challenges?
Several. And it's funny, I actually had a journal that I kept, and I used to write every day into this journal. And I said, I'm going to write a book someday because nobody would believe the things that happen here in the police department. I was fortunate to be able to pick the station I wanted. When I came on, there was 2 women in my class, and they said, one of you is going to the north end and one of you are going to the south end. Whoever scores the highest at the end of the academy will get to pick their choice. Well, ironically, the other woman, who was still a friend of mine today, I lived in the north end, and she thought I would definitely want the north end. So she didn't care about the testing. She let me pass and beat her because she wanted me to pick my first choice because she didn't want to go there. And when it came time to pick, I picked the South End, and she went, "You can't do that. What are you doing? You're going to..." And I said, "I don't want to. I want to go to where I grew up. That's the neighborhood I want to work in," which I did grow up in the South End. So I went to the South End. Back then, we had rotating reliefs. So you worked 1 week, midnight to 8, 11 to 7. No, sorry, midnight to 8 and 8 to 4. 1 week, 4 to 12 and
Right.
12 to 8,
Right.
sorry. And we did that rotating back and forth every week. It was a challenge. I had 2 small babies. My husband had a job that he was away. So it was juggling that. But walking into a police station without another woman there, and it was one locker room with all the lockers all the way around, one bathroom, one shower, and I was the only woman. And I could tell some stories. I went to work every day. We had roll call at 4 o'clock, for instance. I'd go in, and everybody would be around. The guys would be changing their clothes and doing everything. I would come to work dressed already because there was nowhere for me to even change my clothes. The bathroom, if I went to the bathroom, I had a very good, he was wonderful. I'll never forget. At the time, it was Lieutenant Eugenio, who ended up being a captain. He was my first boss down there. And I couldn't even go to the bathroom because if I went to the bathroom, the guys would just come in, open the door, and walk in because there was no locks on the doors. So he made sure that there were locks on the bathroom doors, on the bathroom door, and I could at least go in there and change and go to the bathroom in peace. So we've gone from a station with no locker room for women to when I left here, a woman's locker room, a woman's gym. You could work out, you could do whatever you want in the privacy. As you know, even here, there's a beautiful locker room for women. Those are things that I didn't have the experience of having. On the other hand, I was very fortunate and had a great career because of being a woman, I think. There were very few women on the department, and as time went on, I think the chiefs and the captains realized the value that women had in policing. So then they included you in a lot more and asked you to participate in a lot more because you had something else to bring to the table. Especially in cases with sexual assault, juvenile cases that involved young children. They felt that women brought a different perspective to dealing with certain issues. Not that men don't. I've had great partners, and it's just a different perspective and a different way of working and a different kind of calm, I find, when you're working in that capacity.
Rita, you've done a lot for the police department. You started the first domestic violence unit. I think we were either first or second in the state. What I wanted to ask you is, you're also the second female sergeant to have been promoted, second female to be promoted to sergeant in the police department. What was that like, and what was the challenges of being a woman and a sergeant and frontline supervisor, and later on a commander of a unit? You must have had a lot of challenges, resistance, that type of thing.
Quite a few. If you think about it, I came on in 1978. And ironically, the woman that investigated me to become a police officer was Sergeant Jill Simmons, who happened to be the only woman sergeant in the police department in 1978. Fast forward, from 1978 to 1993 is when I got promoted. Sergeant Simmons was the only female sergeant in the department. When I got made in 1993, I was the second sergeant and the first woman of color. Brought a lot of challenges. Men weren't used to women being in that role. A lot of them were resistant to a woman supervisor, and I'm not debating that. That did happen. But most of the time, the biggest thing is you don't expect anything from anybody else that you don't do yourself. And after a while, you gain the respect. You know, you have to prove that you're going to do the same thing that they can do. And it does work. It was a challenge. There was a lot of resistance. When I ran the head of the domestic violence unit, being a woman, remember, we had to do things, we had to arrest police officers, for instance, at the time. And I was probably the most hated person in the police department at that time because I had to do things, I had to do my job. But it was because a woman was doing it, not because I was a police officer. I was a woman in a role that a lot of men police officers didn't feel should exist in a police department. It was a boys' club. It isn't that way now. I wish and hope that we could have more women in the department. We need it desperately. Women bring so much to the table, and we have to reflect our community. Our communities, people of color, majority, a lot of women, and probably 50-50 or more of women in our communities. I see it at the school. I know we have 50% male and 50% female. So our populations and our
in the workforce
has to reflect that, and it doesn't. And it's a shame because it's a great career. I would not give up my career for anything in the world. It's probably the most rewarding job I've ever had. You build relationships over the years. I have people now who I had probably as juveniles that are grandparents now and come up to me and tell me stories in the past. People stop me still in grocery stores today and say, Sergeant Ribeiro, thank you for what you did to me. I'm going to get emotional because it's such a rewarding career. It truly is. And we just need more. We need more women to come up and play that role. And there's a lot of good women in the community that would make excellent police officers.
Rita, you're right. We've come a long way, but we have a long way to go in terms of women. We still only have one female that's a sergeant in the police department, and this is a good time for our legislators. When we're talking about reform, civil service is the biggest obstacle for us to be able to ensure that level of diversity through the police department. And I agree, women have a lot to offer on the entry level, but also in the leadership role. We are in dire need of having women there, and the civil service exam is clearly not a good barometer or indicator of someone that's going to make a good sergeant, lieutenant, captain, or chief. And so I really ask our legislators to, they should really consider abolishing civil service. I know one female in our department that there's many, but one that comes to mind that would do a fantastic job as a supervisor, but the civil service exam is an obstacle, and anybody can really remember a bunch of material and then regurgitate it and do well on the exam. It's just not a good telltale, and we need more women to lead and guide. And sometimes, you know better than me, maybe you can share with the audience what you can bring not only to the people with service, but even inside the department, the offices, when you bring, for lack of a better word, a woman's touch, a little bit of sensitivity, calm things down, bring an emotional aspect to it that is so easily overseen in policing. I don't know, maybe you can talk about that.
We'll go back to when working in patrol, for instance, as partners. And most guys want another guy for a partner, and that's how they're used to working, and they feel like, I don't want a woman as a partner. They don't say it, but they truly mean it. And then you get into a situation and you have for instance, a male-female relationship, partnership in a car. And you go to a call, and I can remember several calls that we've gone on. And the police officer I had the South End, and we had a lot of bars in the South End at the time. So at night, you getting calls for disturbances in the bar. If you had two male police officers, and this is proven out, 2 male police officers go into the bar. As soon as they see the males and they come in there, there's already a confrontation going on. You go in, female goes in, female police officer, and my male partner, and I go in and take the same 2 gentlemen that are fighting, and I go, okay guys, and they go, oh, Rita, how are you? Okay, what do you want? What can I do for you? And the whole dynamic changes. It sounds crazy, but it does. And so you've already de-escalated a situation just by your presence of being there. So it's like ironic because a lot of times we've gone to domestic calls, the same thing, and somebody be screaming and hollering, and the police officer say, I can't, stop hollering like that. Hey, calm her down, calm them down. But it's just a balance. I call it a balance. It really works. You can diffuse a situation so much easier, and it's not, believe me, I'm not saying that all women react the same way or all men react the same way. There's a lot of men that I've worked with had a tremendous amount of empathy and control that could do the job. But I just think it brings a different perspective. Mm-hmm. And people need to see that as well, and have that respect, because it's a different emotion when you react to somebody that looks like you. That's the other thing. When you can go to a home and somebody sees you in them, that also changes how they react to you. So it's on a lot of levels. We need more women. Every time I'm out and I talk to somebody or I see anybody, I always make sure they know that policing is an opportunity for them, especially young women in the schools. I always say, have you ever thought about that? And then they'll give you a reason why not, or they don't think it's a good idea. And then I tell them some of my history of how this police department changed my life. It really did. I went to UMass Dartmouth to be an accountant. That was my major, accounting. It lasted 1 semester. And then I said, no, I kind of like the psychology, sociology piece, and then I did that. But if it was having these mentors in the community, like a Marguerite Doughton, Ruby Doughton, and Pauline Garcelon, you have to see those women in those positions for you to even attempt. If you see it, you believe it. So you have to see those people around you, and it'll give you the opportunity to do the same thing. And that's why it's important to have women. If you don't have women in policing, other women aren't going to they're not going to see it, and they're not going to want to be there as well. But
Rita, what is, I know we're probably getting close to time here, and I really appreciate you spending time with me. What is your favorite story that touched your heart, that you would want to tell the world?
My favorite.
It's your history, so.
My favorite story, and this may sound crazy, but not crazy, but it's my favorite memory on this job for me is being Mother Teresa's escort. And I would have never had this opportunity, and I'll tell you, this is another true story about women in policing. We happened to have a female mayor when Mother Teresa was coming into the city. And I was a sergeant, and I don't know if I was a sergeant then.
Yeah,
but
I was promoted after you.
But I remember a male captain of detectives had control over what was going on, and I got a phone call, and he said, oh, tomorrow, wear your uniform, not plain clothes. You're going to go do traffic on the corner of some street next to
St. Lawrence.
St. Lawrence. So I just take orders. I'm going to do it. And then the next day, I get a phone call first thing in the morning from the same captain that says, orders have changed. You're going to be in plain clothes, and you're going to report here. And as it turns out later on is when the mayor was meeting with the captain and the Secret Service and whatever, they said, we have Mother Teresa. Don't you have a female that can do this? You don't even have a female here to escort her. And I happen to be the only one available. So I got to be her escort. And believe me, it didn't go over well with this male captain because he didn't think that I should be there. He had it all set up for certain few people. So that to me was probably my best memory of my job, the most rewarding for me, that touched me, because at the same time as I remember my mother had cancer, and my mother was very ill, and we were going up to the airport when she was leaving. And when I was talking to Mother Teresa, she said, oh, bring your mother. I'm going to bless your mother for you. And so I called. My mother was home when she had a caretaker nurse. And I called the nurse. I said, oh, can you get my mother was in a wheelchair. Can you get her up to the New Bedford airport right away? It's Mother Teresa. She's going to bless my mother. And so the funniest thing is she did. And my mother said, oh, we can't go there unless I bring a gift for Mother Teresa. And she made her stop and get a fruit basket. And she brought the fruit basket. And Mother Teresa, they're nuns of charity. They don't keep they give it to people. So my mother made the caretaker stop to get the fruit basket. And then Mother Teresa took it and gave it to somebody else. And then she did bless her. Actually, it ended up being in the front page of the paper the next day, and my mother had that picture made and in front of her in her recliner every day till the day she died. She was so proud that Mother Teresa got to bless her. And if I wasn't a police sergeant in that position at that particular time, I would have never had that opportunity. I've had a lot of rewarding experiences, but that probably will last with me for a lifetime.
I appreciate that, Rita. I know you've touched a lot of lives here, having worked with you, and just on the domestic violence unit is historical in and of itself, how that's impacted women in the city, having the advocates at night and during the day, that you set it up back on, that was on Union Street on the Hatch building, back in 94, 95, whatever it was.
93, it
right,
started.
Yeah. It was around that time.
It was even that was like, it was something that was forced on the department, and they really didn't want it. I don't think at the time. It was fairly new. It was something, the laws had changed, and I remember we had one little file cabinet, and they gave me 2 detectives. Actually, one was Bobby Holmes.
I was just going to say it was Bobby Holmes and Pauline. I was going back.
Those were my 2 detectives when the unit first started. And we had no office. We were in the juvenile division, so we shared desk, and we had this one little file cabinet. And the way it was written up, we had to touch or see every single person that had a domestic case. In the first month, we had I remember 452, I think it was, 452 domestic cases in 1 month. And I only had 2 detectives, and we had to see everybody. I'm like, this is impossible. So we came up with some strategies, and we came up with this letter that if we sent a letter to everybody, a couple of little things. And then I said, this is crazy. We have nowhere to put the files. We have nothing. Next thing you know, the DA's office gave us space. So we were moved up to the district attorney's office, and we ran the unit out of there for about a year. And while I was there, I started strategizing. How can we touch and do what we need to do? So we came back to the Hatch building in New Bedford, right next to the police station. And I contacted a friend at BCC and said, what if we get interns? Is it possible? They get credits, and I have people, them come and help us with the letters and kind of answering phones or something, and we'll train them. So that's how we landed up even getting civilians. And that wasn't looked at very highly at the time as well. Like, what is this woman doing? Now she's bringing people outside the building into our building. That wasn't a very popular thing at the time as well. So, but those interns and people that we brought in gave us the ability to do the work that we needed to do. And then we just built on it. It got to be tedious because we had to train them every single semester. And it was like starting all over again. Then we went to a yearly contract with BCC, and that worked out a little bit better. And then we had grant money. We wrote grants, and we were fortunate. We were fortunate to get that. And we just had one of the best persons just leave. I cried my eyes out. She got hired back, and she must have been here 20-something years by now. Dorothy Lopes.
It's been a year since she left.
Okay.
Time flies so fast.
I'm telling you, and she was amazing. She worked nights till 2 o'clock in the morning. She came in weekends. She worked. She would never take a day off. I'd have to holler at her to take it. Dot, you have to take some time out of here. But she had the most compassion and the most worth ethic that I've ever seen working with victims, and she was just incredible. And the staff that they had after that worked with her, all the volunteers, people that came in, it made the unit one of the best units in the country at the time. It was a great unit.
And your legacy's still living on because the DV unit is still intact and still running. So I know we're cutting close here. So we've come a long way, and we have a long way to go. So how do we get there, Rita?
I think we need some reform. We definitely do. We need some reform. Civil service, and I'll get back to that, I am not a good test taker. And I'm being honest, I took the exam, and I was just fortunate to be in the right place at the right time with the right score at that given moment. But it doesn't work for everybody, especially people of color. People of color are not normally good test takers. The majority, if you look even on scores, if you look at any kind of testing, we need to do better, and we need to find other ways to gauge where people are. And people have so much to offer. It doesn't, you don't have to get 1,000 on an exam to be a good police officer.
I agree with you.
You just have to be a good person and have the right skill set to do the job. And there are a lot of people out there that have it.
I agree. I think an assessment center would do a lot better. We can test someone's skills and give them a battery of situations and see how they manage that. It is a much better barometer for sure. I think we need more women, and maybe we can put a call out there to the ladies out there to join the police department, and the ladies that are here to start working towards moving through the ranks and aspire to be captains and chiefs. And that's where we need to start making that move.
Right. Yeah. Most definitely. Good luck. And I'll do as much as I can, but it only goes so far. You can, like I said before, there are plenty of young women out there that would make fine police officers. We just got to get them in here.
Absolutely, and I think you touched on one of the biggest rewards, and I talk about it when we swear in new police officers. It's something that you don't see on your paycheck on Thursday. It's something that Uncle Sam doesn't get to tax, but it's something you carry for the rest of your life. It's your your life's work. A painter gets to paint something that gets hung up somewhere, and it lasts for eons, right? Well, it's the same thing with policing. We don't always look at it that way. You get to change lives. You get to touch lives. You get to impact lives. And many times, people will reach back to you, and you get to see how they turned out because of those short little moments of giving them some comfort, encouragement, or redirection. So it's more than, this isn't just a job.
Nope,
it's really a vocation.
It really isn't a job. You have to have a passion for helping people. And I say that every day. You have to love people to do this job. If you don't like people, you're in the wrong place. You really do. You truly have to love what you do. You have to love your community, and you have to love the people that you serve. And you want to make a difference in their lives. You can go on. And I have a letter still at home that I still have from a young man who threw me through a set of doors. And I got injured, not bad. And he went to jail and wrote me from jail that I actually saved his life, because had he not got arrested that day, he probably wouldn't be here today, and how it changed his life. And so, you know that you impact lives. You might not see it every day. You know, some of the things you do, you just do because it's your job, and you do it, and you try to do it well, but you don't realize the impact that you have. Just a smile, just saying hello to somebody in a store, just you're in uniform and you go out and you see somebody, and just that personal contact. Hey, how you doing today? You don't even know that makes a difference to somebody till way later. Sometimes later on, that one smile that you did, they were having a bad day, you touched them in a special way that day, and they won't forget it, you know.
No. So I think you hit it right there, Rita. You do get to impact lives every single day, and it's a wonderful job. And I thank you for taking time here with me today. And more importantly, I'm sure you've heard this many times, I thank you for your life's work that you did here in the police department. And for those that you don't get to see, and thank you for how you've changed their life, we thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
And being a leader and a mentor for the women that are coming up, setting the way.
Thank you. Thank you for all you do.